You think you can just leave me, Tobi? Isabella said, with anger in her voice. Isabella, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. Tobi shook his head and let out a mocking laugh. Isabella took a step closer. No, Tobi. It's over when I say it's over. Tobi took a deep breath. I love someone else now. I won't be your play toy anymore. Isabella laughed coldly. Love? You? Don't be silly, Tobi. Everything you have is because of me. Do you know what I can do if you leave me? She whispered. I made you and I can destroy you. What happens when a widowed pastor picks her young lover from the trenches and in return, he leaves her for a younger lover? This is a story of lust, control and betrayal. The big church was full. The congregation standing, lifting their hands, singing to God. Tobi Adeyemi held the microphone with both hands, eyes closed, singing with all his heart. His deep voice filled the church, making some people cry. The instrumentalists played softly, letting his voice shine. At the front, sitting in a big gold chair, was Pastor Isabella Olumide. She sat very still, watching Tobi closely. She did not look away. Tobi sang louder. You are holy, oh, so holy. Then, he opened his eyes. And he saw her looking right at him. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. Just watched him. For a moment, Tobi felt his heart stop. But he kept singing. When the song ended, the whole church shouted hallelujah and clapped. Tobi stepped back, breathing hard. Pastor Isabella stood up and started clapping. Everyone followed her, cheering loudly. But she never took her eyes off Tobi. Then, she smiled. What a ministration. What a gift, she said. The crowd clapped even louder. Tobi bowed his head a little, feeling shy. Pastor Isabella lifted her hand, and the church went silent. God is raising new worshippers, she said. Then, she turned to Tobi. Brother Tobi, see me after service. Tobi nodded quietly. God bless you, Ma. He whispered. As she sat down, a little smirk appeared on her lips. Minister Tobi stood at the door of Pastor Isabella's big, fancy office. On the wall, there was a big picture of Pastor Isabella and her husband, Bishop David, who had passed away, few years ago, leaving her to run the ministry. Pastor Isabella sat on a soft, white couch, looking very calm. She took a slow sip from her glass of juice and smiled at Tobi. Please sit down, Brother Tobi, she said. Tobi walked over and sat down carefully. He sat up straight, trying to look respectful. She looked at him for a moment, tapping her fingers on the glass. You sang so powerfully today. So strong, so deep. That's special. Tobi looked down a little. All glory to God, Ma, he said. Pastor Isabella smiled again. Yes, yes. God wants to use you mightily, in this church and beyond. You are very special to God, and he has chosen you for his work. Tobi didn't know what to say. He just nodded. Pastor Isabella leaned forward. Tobi, tell me, what do you want for your future? Tobi thought for a moment. This question felt big, but he answered honestly. I want to sing for God all over the world, Ma. I want to help people feel God's presence. I want to make albums, hold big concerts, and maybe even teach young singers one day. Pastor Isabella nodded slowly. That kind of dream needs help, she said. It needs the right people, the right favor. She turned around and looked right into Tobi's eyes. And the right covering. Tobi swallowed. He understood what she meant now. She walked back toward him, her steps slow and sure. God put you under my leadership for a reason, she said. I can help you. I can open doors for you. But you have to be wise. Tobi leaned in a little. His heart was beating fast. He wanted to believe this was only about his music. But the way she looked at him, the way she spoke, it felt like more than that. She sat down next to him. Closer than before. Her perfume smelled strong and sweet. Stay close to me, Tobi, she said softly. Let me lead you. Then, she touched his knee. Just a small touch. Light, but clear. Can I count on you? She whispered. Tobi didn't move. He looked into her eyes. His heart was racing. He knew that if he said yes, everything in his life would change. Weeks passed, and Pastor Isabella and Tobi spent more time together. At first, she was just helping him with his music, but soon, they started talking more and sharing secrets. Tobi liked the way she believed in him, and Isabella liked the way he listened to her. One evening, Tobi was in the music studio, inside the church. A new song he had just recorded was playing from the speakers. He listened, hoping it sounded good. Pastor Isabella stood nearby, smiling. She was the one who made sure he got to record this song. She knew he was special. "This song will be a big hit, Tobi," she said happily. "You have something great inside you." She walked up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Tobi felt warm inside. He smiled, feeling happy and thankful. She looked at him for a moment, then said, "Let's go out and celebrate tonight." Tobi nodded, feeling excited about his new song. That night they went for a big party. Many important people were there: big pastors, famous gospel singers, and rich men in fine clothes. Tobi sat at a big table with them, feeling a little nervous. Pastor Isabella sat beside him, dressed in a lovely gown. She spoke to the people around them, smiling and laughing. Then she said, "Everyone, look out for Minister Tobi Adeyemi. He is the future of gospel music." People nodded and smiled at Tobi. He felt proud. Important people were now paying attention to him. He looked at Isabella. She was the one making all this happen. She leaned closer to him and whispered, "Do you see? This is where you belong." Tobi nodded. He was starting to believe her. As they left the party, Pastor Isabella drove her big, fancy car through the quiet city streets. It was very late, and most people were asleep. The night felt peaceful. Tobi sat beside her, looking out of the window. He was thinking about the party, how everyone had noticed him, and how Pastor Isabella was making his dreams come true. "How does it feel?" she asked, looking at him. Tobi smiled a little. "Like a dream." She nodded. "That's because you are walking in God's favor." For a moment, they didn't say anything. The car kept moving, the sound of light music, playing from the car stereo, filling the silence. Then, slowly, Pastor Isabella reached over and touched his hand. Her touch was light, soft, but it stayed for a little while. Tobi's heart beat fast. He didn't know what to say. Then, just as quietly as she had touched him, she moved her hand away and looked back at the road. One quiet night, in a big, fancy hotel. Pastor Isabella and Minister Tobi sat at a small table, away from everyone else. Soft music played in the background. Tobi looked different tonight. He wore a very nice suit. It was a gift from Pastor Isabella. He sat up straight, looking confident, like a man with big dreams. Pastor Isabella watched him with a small smile, happy with what she saw. She took a sip of her drink, then spoke softly. "Do you know why I believe in you, Tobi?" Tobi looked up at her, listening carefully. "Because you remind me of myself when I was younger," she said. "You are smart. You are special. You are meant for great things." Tobi's heart felt full. He liked hearing those words. Pastor Isabella leaned in just a little, her eyes never leaving his. "You don't have to struggle like I did," she said. "I will take care of you." Tobi took a deep breath. He felt safe. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Ma. I will never forget this," he said. Pastor Isabella smiled. "I know you won't." Then, she reached out and gently fixed the collar of his shirt. Her fingers moved slowly. Her touch was soft. Tobi sat very still. His heart beat faster. But he didn't move away. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something changed between them. One evening, Pastor Isabella asked Tobi to meet her at a big fancy hotel. The hotel room was big and beautiful, with soft golden lights and big, soft chairs. Outside the window, the city was busy, but inside, everything was quiet. On the table, there was a bottle of red juice and 2 glasses, almost empty. Tobi stood by the window, looking outside. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked like he was thinking about something very serious. Pastor Isabella sat on the couch, watching him. She was wearing a soft, shiny robe that made her look like a queen. After a long, quiet moment, Isabella spoke. "You have changed, Tobi." Tobi turned a little and looked at her. "I have." Isabella smiled. "Yes. You walk differently now. You talk with confidence. You are becoming the man you are meant to be." Tobi took a deep breath, like he was trying to clear his head. Isabella poured herself more red juice and kept watching him. "But, something is stopping you," she said. Tobi was quiet for a moment. Then, he said softly, "Maybe I don't want to lose myself." The room was silent again. Isabella stood up slowly and walked toward him. She stopped very close to him, but he did not move away. "You are not losing yourself, Tobi," she said gently. "You are finding yourself." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers moving along his jaw. Tobi became very still. His breathing changed. His heart was beating fast. Then, she stepped even closer, their faces almost touching. "I told you. I will protect you. I will give you the world." Tobi swallowed hard. He looked like he was fighting with himself. Then, suddenly, he turned to her. And then, it happened. Their lips touched. At first, it was soft, slow. But then, it became stronger, deeper. Isabella pulled him close, holding him tight. Tobi's hands grabbed her waist, like he didn't want to let go. Pastor Isabella sat at her big, shiny desk, looking at her phone. She tapped her fingers on the table, slow and steady. She looked upset. Tobi walked in. He looked sharp, wearing a nice suit. He checked his watch and held his phone. But as soon as he saw Isabella's face, he knew something was wrong. Isabella didn't look up. Her voice was cold. "You didn't call me last night." Tobi sighed. He knew this would happen. "I got home late," he said quietly. "Rehearsals took long. I was tired." Now Isabella looked at him. Her eyes were sharp. "Tired?" she asked. She stood up and walked around the desk, standing close to him. She crossed her arms. Her voice sounded different, strong, like she was claiming something. "You weren't too tired to go to Femi Oak's birthday party." Tobi's body became stiff. He didn't think she knew about that. Isabella stepped closer, her voice softer but serious. "Tell me, Tobi, are you seeing someone else?" Tobi didn't say anything. But his silence said enough. Isabella's lips pressed together. Her eyes flashed with something: anger, jealousy. She turned away, took a deep breath, then faced him again. Her voice was calm, but strong. "You belong to me, Tobi." Tobi shifted, feeling uncomfortable. "Isabella." "Pastor Isabella," she corrected, her voice firm. Tobi's jaw tightened. She moved even closer, placing a hand on his chest. Her touch was warm, but her eyes looked like a warning. "I gave you everything, Tobi. I made you who you are. And now you think you can leave me?" Tobi swallowed hard. He felt trapped. Isabella's hand pressed against his chest a little harder. Her voice was low and serious. "I won't let you disrespect me, Tobi." Tobi looked down, breathing deeply. He wanted to argue, but he knew it wouldn't help. Finally, he nodded, his voice quiet. "I understand." Isabella smiled. It was a slow, knowing smile. She cupped his face gently, looking into his eyes. "Good." Then, she kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a kiss that said, "You are mine." When she pulled away, she fixed her robe and smiled. "Now, go and lead worship like the man I made you." Tobi nodded and walked out. But as he left, his face changed. His jaw was tight. His eyes looked dark and angry. He knew now. He was trapped. At a studio session, one late night, Tobi sat by the big digital mixer, his head in his hands. He looked worried, like something was bothering him a lot. The door opened slowly. Chris, his best friend, walked in. Chris always looked cool and relaxed, but now he looked a little worried too. "Bro, you look like someone in big trouble," Chris said, standing near Tobi. Tobi let out a big breath. "Maybe I am." Chris pulled up a chair and sat down. "Tell me what's wrong." Tobi was quiet for a moment. Then, he leaned back and looked at the ceiling. "It's Isabella." Chris' face changed. He knew Tobi never liked talking about her. Pastor Isabella? Chris asked. Tobi gave a small, sad laugh and nodded. Have you ever felt like you walked into a big trap, and you can't find a way out of it? Chris frowned. He was starting to understand. He leaned in closer and spoke softly. Bro, what's really going on? Tobi opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but then he closed it. His eyes looked tired, like he had been thinking too much. Finally, he shook his head. It doesn't matter. I'm stuck now. Chris watched him closely. He wanted to say something, but before he could, Tobi's phone started to ring. The screen lit up with a name, Pastor Isabella calling. Tobi looked at his phone for a second, then turned it over so he wouldn't see the screen. Chris raised his eyebrows. Oh, ignoring Madam now? That's new. Tobi sighed and stood up. A small smile appeared on his face. Let's get out of here. I need some fresh air. Chris nodded, and they left together. As soon as Tobi stepped outside, he felt a little lighter. They stepped into a nearby cafe. The small cafe was quiet and peaceful. The air smelled like coffee and sweet bread. It was nice. Tobi and Chris sat outside, talking and laughing. For the first time in a long time, Tobi felt a little happy. A few tables away, a woman sat alone, reading a book. She looked calm, like she was in her own little world. She wasn't trying to get attention, but there was something special about her. Tobi glanced at her, then looked again. He didn't know why, but she made him stop and stare. He didn't even realize he was looking until Chris followed his eyes and smirked. Ah, so that's what fresh air looks like, Chris joked. Tobi chuckled and shook his head. Shut up. But he kept looking. The woman, Naomi, felt his gaze and looked up. Their eyes met. She didn't look away quickly. Instead, she gave a soft, small smile before going back to her book. Something inside Tobi felt different. For the first time in a long time, he felt something good. Chris smiled and bumped Tobi's arm. Go talk to her, he said. Tobi shook his head. And say what? Hi, I'm a gospel singer with a very scary boss. Chris laughed. Just say something. Go. Tobi waited for a moment. He wasn't sure. But then, he stood up and walked over to the pretty lady sitting alone. Naomi looked up as he got close. She had a nice smile. Hello, she said. Tobi smiled back. He felt a little shy, which was strange for him. He pointed at the chair. Can I sit here? Naomi tilted her head, thinking. Then she nodded. Tobi sat down. The air felt different now, like something special was happening. I've seen you before, Naomi said. You sing at Fountain of Love Church. Tobi raised his eyebrows. You go there. Not all the time, she said. But my friend took me once. I remember seeing you, leading worship. Tobi laughed a little. I hope I didn't sing badly. Naomi giggled. No. Your voice was special. Tobi blinked. He was used to people saying nice things about his singing. But this felt real. Like she meant it. For a little while, they sat quietly. Naomi sipped her tea. Then she saw the black bracelet on his wrist. It said Grace Alone. That's nice, she said. What does it mean? Tobi smiled. It reminds me that no matter what happens, God's grace helps me. Naomi nodded. That's important to remember. Tobi looked at her. She didn't know his problems, but somehow, it felt like she understood him. For the first time in a long time, he felt happy. Pastor Isabella sat in her big, fancy house. She wore a soft silk robe and held a glass of red wine. The room was quiet. She was waiting. Waiting for Tobi. But he hadn't come. She looked at her phone. Missed call, Minister Tobi. Her face changed. She called him again. The phone rang. Once. Twice. No answer. Her fingers tightened around her glass. Her heart beat faster. She didn't like this. She didn't like when things didn't go her way. Slowly, she picked up her phone again. This time, she sent a voice message. Her voice was soft, but it was not kind. Where are you, Tobi? Don't make me ask twice. She finished her wine in one sip. Her eyes burned. If Tobi thought he could leave her, he was very wrong. As days went by, Naomi and Tobi spent more time together. They sat on a bench in the park, talking and laughing. They liked being together. Naomi smiled. "How did you start singing, Tobi?" Tobi chuckled. "I started in church, like many boys. But I didn't think I would be doing it like this." Naomi tilted her head. "Like what?" Tobi sighed. "With so much pressure." Naomi looked at him closely. "But you love worship, right?" Tobi looked at her. She was kind, and she wasn't trying to force him to say anything. He nodded. "Yes. I love it very much." Naomi frowned. "Then why do you look so sad about it?" Tobi froze. He didn't know what to say. She was asking hard questions. "Tobi, are you okay?" Naomi asked softly. Tobi forced a small smile. "Yeah. Just church stuff." But Naomi didn't believe him. She could see something was wrong. A few days later, Tobi went to see Pastor Isabella in her big office. She was standing by the window, arms crossed. She did not look happy. "Where have you been?" she asked. "I told you I've been busy," Tobi said. Isabella turned to him, eyes sharp. "Busy?" She walked closer. "I know when someone is hiding something." Tobi's body got stiff. He didn't like this. Isabella stared at him, then smiled a scary smile. "You met someone," she said. Tobi's face changed for a second. He looked nervous. Isabella saw it. She laughed, shaking her head. "You think you can leave me?" she asked. "I'm not. Don't lie." Her voice was sharp. Tobi's hands curled into fists. "I gave you everything, Tobi," Isabella said. "Your music, your name, your success." She stepped even closer, voice turning cold. "And if you think I will let you throw me away for another woman, you don't know me." Tobi's heart pounded. He knew she was dangerous. "Isabella, please," he said. Her face got hard. "Pastor Isabella," she corrected him. Tobi clenched his jaw. She touched his chest gently, but her eyes were scary. "Make the right choice," she whispered. "Or I will make it for you." Tobi swallowed hard. He knew what that meant. She would not just take away his career, she would ruin him. That night, Naomi and Tobi sat in her car. It was quiet. Tobi looked different, worried. "Tobi, are you sure you're okay?" Naomi asked. Tobi forced a laugh. "Yes. Just tired." But Naomi saw his fingers tapping fast on his knee. His eyes kept looking at his phone. He was scared of something. "Tobi, is someone making you do things?" she asked. Tobi's head snapped up. Their eyes met. Naomi could see something was wrong. Then, his phone buzzed. He looked down. It was Pastor Isabella. Again. Tobi breathed out, looking away. He put the phone in his pocket. "I should go," he said softly. Naomi watched him leave. She felt sad. She could tell something was wrong. But Tobi wasn't ready to tell her. She sat in her car, staring at the dashboard. Something was very, very wrong. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to read from you. I have another exciting story coming in a few days. Subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified as soon as I upload it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you for watching.